Bang, bang. What's going on, guys? Hope you guys are really excited about this interview. I really enjoyed it. I think you will as well. But before we get into that, make sure that you like this video so that more people on YouTube can find it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And don't forget that BlockFi is the sponsor today. They've got 3 products. You can buy and sell crypto on their crypto exchange. You can deposit crypto and earn up to 8.6% APY in an interest-bearing account, or you can deposit crypto and take out a US dollar loan against your crypto collateral. You can use the description right here, or you can go to blockfi.com/pomp to learn more. All right, let's get into this episode. I hope you guys enjoy this one. All right, guys, bang, bang. I've got Jessica here with me. She has never been on Zoom before, so we're going to give this a try. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for giving me a reason to download it. I was kind of resistive, but I couldn't deny your invite, so here I am.
You have a very different background than almost anybody else I've ever had on the podcast. Let's start just with where were you born, where did you grow up, and how did you get into modeling, photography, etc.?
Well, I'm from Kansas, so I did 20 years of hard winter and decided I didn't want snow anymore. So graduated college after doing my undergraduate, moved away, did the Hollywood dream thing. So lots of photo shoots, lots of production. I'm a photographer now, but moved out here to do modeling, hair and makeup, just, the Hollywood thing.
So when you say the Hollywood thing, how exactly does this work? I think people are fascinated with, if you go to Hollywood and you talk to every waiter, waitress, bar hop, etc. Like everyone's trying to break into acting, modeling, or some aspect of that. Like, how did you break into that industry? And then, like, what is that life like?
Well, no 2 days are ever the same, which is a part of the fun of it, I guess, the appeal. So it's hard because it's already been a year that I haven't had my normal life. So it's sort of bittersweet to think back to all the great things about it that aren't afforded to us right now. So it was a lot of castings, a lot of media events, a lot of production days that were long, and I do all kinds of things. So it was just fun to squeeze in on production however I could. And I started doing sports media for combat sports, and that was really fun. So I just sort of could squeeze in wherever my interest led me. So that was a cool thing about the opportunities in Hollywood.
All right, so let's separate these out. Let's first talk about the modeling part of it. What is that like on a day-to-day basis? So forget it, kind of the other aspects of what you would do, like just from a modeling standpoint. Is it you show up to a shoot and literally it's like 6 hours and they just take pictures of you the whole time? Is that weird?
It was weird for a couple of years. I traveled around the country and I would just self-fund my tour across America and shooting. And the world was just different when I started in 2008. So once I parked it in LA, sure, it's a little more, this is a little more structured, but you build a network and then you start doing projects with people that you're comfortable with creating. And you start just cross-promoting each other. And so I really work with the same core group of people a lot of the times, and we just diversify and pull each other in on projects we're doing. So
you mentioned being comfortable with the people that you work with. If somebody asked me to go and be a model, I would have all of my clothes on, and probably it would be the least eventful photo shoot in the world.
Chaperoned by your wife. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, my wife would actually be the one directing it, etc.
Yes.
And she probably would be telling me I'm an idiot for even trying anything like that. But
she's a good cheerleader for you. I watch
Exactly.
Lunch Money, I know.
Well, if you watch Lunch Money, then you already know exactly how that would go down. I pretty much would do nothing that I wanted to do. But in terms of the modeling that you did, a lot of it when you're going across the country was unstructured, it sounds like. Then you get to LA, it's a lot more structured. You're talking about like kind of being comfortable. You eventually end up doing a bunch of modeling with Playboy and all that. Like, how do you get comfortable with people? Is it weird? Like, that's just such a foreign concept to 99% of people. Like, what is that like?
Well, it's been so long since I had to think about it that it's hard to articulate it, and because pretty much my existing network is all people that are already in it. So I guess I never make that that explanation. It's not unlike anything else when you do it. I mean, when somebody goes to war, they just get used to the things that come with that. So this was just a different kind of war, a different battle, normalizing some things. And so I don't know. It's hard to think back to it. I just accepted that was the path I picked to have the ticket out of my hometown. So after graduating college, I just decided to go model, which is strange, but
yeah. Hey, one of the things that's fascinating about this is as a ticket out of your hometown, if you decide, okay, I'm going to go do this, what's the reaction from your family, from friends you went to college with? Is it one of support? Is it something that's so outside of their framework of a job that they are jealous? They're agnostic to it? What was that?
Well, I didn't ask anybody's permission. I didn't require anybody's support. And if you're not a person that requires those things, then you can break free of the mold that's made for you. So I didn't want to stay in Kansas, and I didn't want to do that. Now with the city having changed some, I can see the appeal of that a little more than I would before the shutdown. So, but I feel like people have to get it out of their system. If they want to go and do something, you've got to go check it out, because otherwise you'll just wonder.
Yeah.
So my true friends, my true support system, they didn't care. They didn't bring it up all the time. They didn't want to hear stories. They don't go like my pictures, that type of thing, which is fine. That's not what I needed from my real world friends. You can always make a digital community that supports you and what you create. So yeah, there's been a bit of a divide. I come from a pretty conservative background. My parents weren't too thrilled, but we just didn't make it a big talking point. They were just happy I made it to 18, all good. So
coming from a conservative family and then ended up in Playboy, I'm sure was a challenge to navigate, but it sounds like you figured it out. Talking about go ahead.
Well, now I'm navigating the opposite terrain, having been a Playboy in Hollywood, that type of thing. And then changing politically to more center right, that comes with its own uphill battle that was reminiscent of coming from a conservative family in a red state and then going off and, posing naked, that type of thing. So it's a similar experience. It's parallel.
We'll get to your second transition here in a second, but the Playboy experience, I am sure that if you get into modeling, it is almost like the pinnacle. I almost look at it like if you play basketball, you want to play in the NBA. If you play football, you want to play in the NFL. As a model, that seems like that is kind of the aspirational achievement. What was that like? Any regrets, positives, negatives? Just how do you kind of view that now that you don't spend all of your time doing it?
I just accepted it as the terms of modeling, that it was even supermodels don't get out of the game without posing naked in some capacity. So that part wasn't ever really a concern for me. In fact, if you're going to do it, you may as well go all in. So I looked at people like Jenny McCarthy and Melania Trump and people like that. It's like you can, of course, pose for Playboy and then move beyond it into whatever domain you want. And it's a good launching platform. So everybody has to come from somewhere.
It's fascinating to me to think about, and I don't even know if you realize this, like the thought process that even the supermodel ends up modeling naked at some point, but people being able to transition past, like you mentioned, when it's coming up, are you nervous? Are you worried at all? Do you think about like, oh, my friends, my family, et cetera, here's what they're going to think? Or is it from a political or a professional standpoint, it is the epitome and kind of that achievement. And so you're more focused on this professional goal and everything else. You're like, hey, I'll figure it out as it comes.
Well, I wanted to do the commercial aspects of posing for magazines like Playboy and FHM, and there was a whole series of other magazines. But I just wanted to do that to legitimize the fact that for 2 years I had already been modeling. So I had already done sexy photo shoots and lingerie and all that. So I guess I just wanted to commercially validate my endeavor. So, and it was good for marketing after the fact. because then other brands want to use you, and how that whole thing ascends.
So this sounds nuts, but as I hear you talking, you're basically describing what now everyone is like yelling and screaming all excited about. It's like the creator economy, right? It's these people who they build some large audience and then they're able to monetize it afterwards. Really what you're talking about almost, a decade and a half ago is as you're coming up in the modeling world, you end up getting into Playboy. That's like a stamp of approval or a validation of that career. And then you're able to launch that into other business endeavors. Is that kind of a fair comparison?
Exactly. And everybody wants to put somebody else in, a bottle, a container that they can understand. And it's been so long that now I've been interested in so many other things that I feel like I've shattered that mold enough, but I still go to the well enough to support the fact that that's why people follow me. But it's been really great to just grow an audience, and then whoever wants to stick around for the conversation can, or, if not, I'll still push the pictures and that type of thing. So I know why people came, but that isn't necessarily why they stayed. So, but no, I appreciate the fact that that I got a little bit of head start on the game. The only bad side about coming from doing it before the creator economy is that I didn't necessarily see the market potential for some of these things, because I had been so used to just giving away my product online just to build a community around, because we weren't really community building in 2008 so much. I mean, I was just in artist communities growing in that space. There was social media networks that were just for models and photographers to connect so we could create in our own little world, instead of things that were so wide open like Instagram for everybody to consume. So
it's fascinating to me that if you had almost done that today, in one viewpoint, it's almost taboo at this point, right? It seems like there's a lot more social pressures, and the way that some of those activities and publications, et cetera, are viewed is very different than it was a decade or 15 years ago. At the same time, you being the model actually in the content, there's way more tools available for you to actually build an audience, catch the audience, monetize the audience. And so it just
and they
feels
don't
like
see it coming.
And they don't see it coming. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, some people are just taken by surprise, I guess, my diverse interests, but everybody is always everybody has a whole universe inside them. And obviously everybody has potential to grow and find new interests. So it's fun to just sneak up on people and pop some stuff in. Like, people are often surprised that, I'm a mixed martial artist fan.
Yeah. And so I guess from the publication side, are they in trouble with things like OnlyFans or streaming platforms, or the ability for whether it's models or other kind of content creators to go direct to audiences? Or is there still some kind of moat that they have in terms of that stamp of approval, right? If there's people who want to be in modeling today, do they still want to go and be featured in Playboy? Or do they just say, I don't even need that. I can just go direct to an audience and monetize it that way? Like, what do you see happening there?
I think that it's still a novelty to be associated with brands, but also the brands that are leveraging models or online personalities has opened up so much. Makeup campaigns for just beauty bloggers because of their wide audience and the reach that they have. So the power has just shifted to creators, and that's a really nice thing, because we can validate with stats the reach that we're going to have for a company to choose us, as opposed to one of the other 90 people that are just like us, but maybe better.
Yeah. So if I talked to you in 2008 to like maybe the early 2010s, and I said, what do you do for a living? How would you have described it? Would you have said, I'm a model, I'm a playmate? Like, what would you have described then? And knowing that it's probably changed, but how did you originally think of it?
Well, I would sit for artists and sculptors and painters and photographers mostly, and they would work from those images that we would make. But the community was just small. I mean, I was a starving artist for a long time, so it's nice to not be that so much these days. But yeah.
And so if we fast forward to today, I think that you have tapped into many other different audiences, and it sounds like a lot of those audiences are coming out of your personal interests, right? So we can start with MMA, and then there's Bitcoin, and now even kind of broader macroeconomics and government. But MMA seems to be the first thing that you kind of transition to or sort of talk about outside of the arts or the creative work. Where does that interest come from? And like, how did you navigate that transition? Was it something that was very strategic and thoughtful, or did one day you just start tweeting about MMA and said, hey, look, I don't care what people think?
Well, I would watch the fights with a friend, a Playboy photographer, kind of funny. Yeah, I just watched, really loved it, got enamored with the game. You start investing in individual sports are so much different than team sports because you get to know the players so much more intimately, and they do a pretty good job of brand building the individuals. So especially with social media, and so you become more engaged in their game, I guess. So I just loved it. I fell in love with it. I don't really know what to say other than that, but the space was so wide open, especially when I started to shoot pictures, because then I was getting ringside access and cage side opportunities to shoot for amateur and some professional leagues. So yeah, it was fun. So I just saw the opportunity. I've done the red carpet run roll camera for, UFC Hall of Fame, and just these interviews and media days the day before that they, when they do their weigh-ins and stuff. So it was just an opportunity to go leverage my modeling, but then contribute in a different kind of way. And I just loved the scene, and it was different. And I relate to fighters and their stories and overcoming obstacles in the journey and seeing the hard work. Like, I find them so inspiring because we're all fighting for something.
What are you fighting for?
Oh, wow. Such a big idea, right? You have to, I am shattering the mold that was made for me as, a little farm girl in Kansas that was never supposed to leave and get out, and certainly not get to break the need to have a job and people to have to please all the time. Like, I speak my mind and I say exactly what I mean, probably too far of a degree because I don't have really any accountability in that way, but that's what freedom is to me. So I guess what I'm fighting for is building something where nobody can take that from me in a world where people are constantly seeking to invalidate your humanity for not having a mainstream opinion and perspective on things.
And so when you think about the transition around MMA, some of that was personal interest. You enjoyed watching it, you enjoyed talking about it. But you also had somewhat of a career change there, it sounds like. You went from being the subject of the photography to actually being the photographer in many cases, where you were capturing the content. Was that anything kind of driving that? Or was it just you were familiar with cameras and had one and wanted to start taking pictures? Like, what drove that transition?
I found that I had all this access, and I picked up a camera to not waste the access that I had. So that worked with MMA because I was just getting such positive results and access to fighters and making friends with journalists. And they were just people I wanted to be around. And like I said, I find the fighter stories so just inspiring. So it was a way to enhance my hobby, and also it gave me a reason to find a new way to be a creator. So I picked up a camera because I didn't want to waste the opportunity, fumbled my way through it. Nobody seemed to even notice I was fumbling my way through the beginnings of it. So it is just I had time to do it. And I always love new challenges and being able to just absorb information. So it was just something that I felt like doing. And so I did it. And that's been the best thing that modeling has afforded me in this lifestyle is that I can go all in on anything I'm interested in.
So I'm noticing a trend here, which it sounds like basically you said, hey, as a Playboy Playmate, I can get my foot in the door. When I get my foot in the door, I have this incredible access. And in a very opportunistic way, you knew that if you had your foot in the door, had access, and you brought a camera with you, you could almost launch an entirely new career and not break the mold from going from Kansas to LA, but also break the mold from being the Playboy model to now being somebody who's actually creating the content and the photographer. Is that fair?
That's very fair. Yeah.
Okay.
And it keeps opening my world up so much. So if you're bringing value to other people, then they'll open doors for you too. So
Yep.
it's been nice because the world feels so big and wide open.
Okay. So this is fascinating because it sounds like you had this second career, if you will, that was taking off. COVID happens. Everyone's ordered to go sit in their houses. Pretty much everything that you had done up until that point was destroyed, right? There's no photo shoots, whether you're in front of the camera or behind the camera, like it all just goes to zero. What's your reaction when that occurs? How do you think about it? And what did you do?
Well, I had what is commonly called a red-pilled moment. So it gave me the opportunity to question everything I thought I believed. And that's quite the paradigm shift. It happened suddenly, but incrementally. But I had something traumatic, with the shutdown happens because all of my income was gig economy and, freelance, finding my way. And I did so many things, but there has to be international travel and there has to be live events and there has to be that ecosystem to support, free market opportunities. So suddenly all my income turned off because I hadn't done the internet monetization or anything like that. I was just happily enjoying my life. And then all of a sudden it came to a screeching halt. And then they started doing things like turning people's power and water off if they were gathering in their homes and all these just things that made me really need to go look at what I thought about size of government and those types of things.
Okay, so before we get into the finance and government side, let's just talk about from like a business perspective.
Okay.
You've got a great business, multiple streams of income, everything's going awesome. COVID happens, income goes to zero. What do you do? Do you try to just scramble and figure out online and like other types of revenue channels? How did you kind of navigate?
Well, it was tough. At least I had some savings from the years. So I burned through that in about 6 months. And I was astonished that we weren't over this yet. So I was angry, it's hard to not be.
And so when you think about like that anger, is that coming from you're angry that there's the shutdown, you're angry at yourself that you had everything kind of in the analog world? Like what was driving that anger?
Well, I was always aware that anything could bring my freelancing to a screeching halt, but it was never supposed to be government. They were never supposed to create problems for me. But I was always aware that there was no safety net for me because that was the exchange that I had made. It wasn't, talk about risk aversion and things like that. I'm not a person that's particularly afraid of those things because they're always there. So then when I saw everybody's reaction to, the virus, it was recalibrating of everything I thought that was happening around me.
And so as this plays out, you said you had kind of this red pill moment. What were the things that maybe were antithetical to what you previously believed, or the changes in opinion that you had as this all played out?
Well, size of government and their ability to the whole emergency powers and being able to make decisions for you. The transparency of the media brought that into question. The amount of coordination between nations to just wave your hand and shut down the world, that was kind of astonishing to me. There were things that I had always heard conservatives say, but I just hadn't had an opportunity to see it in the world to really point at that thing and say, this is what, over-regulation looks like. I'd heard people say that, but I didn't really know what that meant.
And is it fair to say that, and this is a huge overgeneralization, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Los Angeles and kind of Southern California is generally seen as a very liberal leaning type of geographic region. people, for the most part, it seems like hey, the government is going to save us. The government has the right solutions. The government is going to step in here. And so this red pilling that you went through almost kind of went counterfactual to, or was a narrative violation to those around you, right? It seems like it's almost like, well, the majority of people felt one way, you started to, again, break the mold and
Yes.
think for yourself to some degree, right?
Yes. And that's frowned upon. Which,
explain why is it frowned upon?
Well, it's frowned upon because they would prefer that you not challenge any of those beliefs because it leads other people to doing the same. And I didn't know that disagreeing was going to cause me to lose opportunities and friends, even family members, that type of thing. But it will. And I feel like that's contrary to the entire concept of freedom of speech and freedom of opinion and, diversity of thought. And that opened my eyes to a lot, and the problems with mob mentality, cancel culture. It just opened up a door to everything, because if you agree with things like the shutdown, then the left just turns its back on you entirely, and it just eats itself in that way. So I guess I'm just a product of the fact that I had a disagreeing opinion for shutting the economy down locally. And then people make me the bad guy in that situation, which is crazy because I have no institutional powers whatsoever. What does it really matter what I say or think?
When you say people make you the bad guy, is this more like industry, friends, and kind of forces, or more of like the social media world and people being toxic or whatever online?
Well, you can always minimize the latter by not talking about it a lot, but it was all I was thinking about. So, and I was having my own journey. It was more like a public, an opportunity for me to digest what was happening and my evolution. It was just publicly happening because a lot of it was the ideas and the arguments were coming from, online. But yeah, I changed my entire media sources and the people I followed and engaged with. And yeah, it was really recalibrating. And you can never undo it.
What was the most surprising part of all of this? And I ask that as I think that there's some people who had a starting point that was like halfway down the red pilling pathway, and then this all exasperated it. But you strike me as somebody who went through the full experience, right, from kind of start to finish during this. And so what was the most surprising thing that you kind of took away from that experience?
Other people's unwillingness to let you change and be fine with it, because everybody has this little characterization of who you are. They're not actually able to really roll with the fact that you're going to evolve, because usually evolution is slow, but this happened rather aggressively. I mean, I can benchmark it from a 1-year point. So I sound different. All my interests are different. My perspectives of history, I had to relearn everything I ever believed historically.
So when people hear that, there's two schools of thought. The people who agree with you are going to say, amazing. She, was taught one thing. She thought one way. That's the incorrect way of thinking. And now she's seen the light, and look how smart she is because she agrees with, what we agree with. The people who disagree with the way you think now say, oh my God, she changed her information sources. She created an echo chamber. What an idiot. That's the problem in America. And we've got to prevent that from happening to the masses, right? I always laugh. I'm literally laughing as I'm asking the question because it feels like those two extremes obviously provide like the truth somewhere in between there. And so walk us through from almost like an execution or application standpoint of when you say you changed your information sources, what were they? What did you change them to? What were the types of people that you started to consume content from that you hadn't been from before? Just whatever you can share on that front.
Well, I wouldn't want to risk getting your video demonetized or get you in trouble. So I'm trying to edit myself to a.
You can say, listen, you can say whatever you want to say. Don't worry about monetization on YouTube, which, by the way, the fact that that's the first thing you think of may be part of the problem.
Well, and I'm not a YouTuber and I don't rely on that, but I don't rely on brand endorsements or any of that. That was one great thing that made me have be in the right situation where I could speak my mind, and I realize how many people can't or aren't allowed to. People will message me and say, hey, I agree with your politics, but I'm afraid I work in Hollywood and that won't go well. And so it was just really surprising to me, the amount of people that want to but can't. And then I saw that phenomenon and I was like, well, it means I need to speak even more.
So that brings us to the topic that everyone is wondering, which is Bitcoin. How the hell did you come across Bitcoin and why did you become interested?
Well, I had learned about it just from observing. I've had friends that are into it and they'll make posts and I would read it. But I didn't understand I didn't have a necessity for it until the shutdown came. And then the stimuluses started happening. And then you learn about the Fed and you can't audit it and, all these things. And like I said, all this happened to me in a year, the evolution of all of this, because I couldn't have cared less about finance. So I had to learn a lot really fast. But I had nothing to do. So that was the upside. Since Los Angeles was shut down, I had nothing but time and new resources that educated. So now I see the necessity of it. How you get there, just wanting money that they can't ruin. I'm not somebody that's amassed a lot of private property. I have a Ford and a French Bulldog. It's not like I have a lot of value to protect or, transition my assets or something, but it was just the principles, like the fact that people can wave their hand and stop the world and destroy people's ability to make a living. And they can wave their hand and change, the geopolitics of what's happening in other countries. And then they can actively dilute the dollar that's in your bank account that you've already worked for and essentially renegotiate the wage you worked for retroactively. That seems so crazy to me.
You definitely were not red pilled. You were orange pilled because
okay.
you're speaking the language. In terms of this kind of learning journey, right? And it really does sound like you kind of went through an evolution of understanding and frankly, kudos to you, because it sounds like you were actually very thoughtful, not only of understanding what's happening right now, but you went back in history and started to understand why have certain things happened and created the situation that we're in today. Why talk about it publicly, right? Because you could have said, hey, you know what? I've got a bunch of free time. I'm going to educate myself. Okay, cool. Now I'm educated. You know what? I think I should buy some Bitcoin. I think I should change my thoughts. And you could have done that all in private with no risk to your career or anything else.
Yeah.
You chose to talk about it and talk about it quite a bit. So why do that?
Well, I didn't know where it was heading. Just publicly discussing the shutdown when it all happened. Obviously, everybody was talking about it for the most part. But I didn't know necessarily one thing would lead to another like it would. And then you find yourself in the next discovery and understanding of what's going on leads you to the next step. Like it took me a year of the process before I bought Bitcoin, which was like 2 weeks ago. Wasn't even that long ago. So thought it just takes a while for thought to get you to action. And I was just ready to ease the depression because I was depressed about the political landscape and the social engineering I was witnessing. And I guess the more I witnessed and became aware of those things, the more I felt compelled that I had to say these things that other people weren't going to say, or at least not people in my little domain of the internet. So, but like I said, a lot of my understanding came from those online discussions.
Yeah.
So as many people, go ahead.
Well, I should say it's fascinating to hear you kind of talk about how impactful the online education, the information was to that journey.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Thank goodness for YouTube educators and people who want to give away what they know, like yourself, because I don't think I would have always connected the two. I just had an existential crisis with what's happening in my country and specifically my state. And then to, have witnessed places like Texas and Florida fully functioning. And I was like, I want that kind of leadership. Why can't, and then everything that descended from that, I guess, just led me to Bitcoin.
Yeah. You described it almost as a parallel economy, right? Kind of the digital world and digital currencies and these open protocols. How do you look at earning moving forward? Is it something where the work that you do, you'll ask to be paid in Bitcoin or other digital currencies? Will you basically take a portion of what you get paid and convert it? Like, does anything change, or is it more just an awareness of, hey, there's kind of these two economies that are parallel and you'll exist in both of them, but it won't necessarily change anything from your work perspective?
Well, I started the daydream of two parallel economies because I wanted to be free of things like cancel culture. And I wanted to, go and Gina Carino and make sure that she had a job, even though she now can't have a job with Disney, and Candace Owens and people like that just get accosted online and their opportunities removed for nothing other than their opinions. So I wanted to go back to the land of where we were fine with having diversity of thought. So I just wanted to go participate with people that wouldn't financially consequent each other in this way. But it's so new to me. I've had Bitcoin for 2 weeks. So it's sort of hard for me to have amassed the understanding of how it is that I could possibly earn in Bitcoin, but it's just the willingness, and it certainly signals some confidence in it. And it's probably going to present new opportunities. I don't even know how you can necessarily earn in crypto yet. So, but I'm willing, and just being willing is going to bring opportunity, I'm sure.
Yeah, you are very open-minded. So I congratulate you on that, because that is a rare skill in today's world. What has the response been among other people in the various communities that you've worked in and you have friends in, as you've kind of talked about more of this publicly, you bought Bitcoin, et cetera? Has it been one that has been receptive? Is it one that is a little bit more kind of abrasive, or have they been agnostic to some of this?
A couple of my friends already were Bitcoin holders. So, and now I don't really deal with people that, because I'm so public about I just assume people know that about me now. So, I've been creating during the shutdown, it's been less opportunity for growth, but it's made it to where you can have small productions with just the people that you know and that you're comfortable with and that are all on the same page with some things. Otherwise, you have serious disagreements about how it's safe to operate your space and those sorts of things. So the people that I consider my friends today, because it's changed a little bit, I may have just deepened ties with people who were already, right of center. So so they believe it, but they don't need me to have to adopt all their beliefs. They don't have to buy Bitcoin themselves to be fine and never bring it up if they think it's dumb. They're, some people that aren't really all that into it are like, just don't invest more than you can afford to lose. And that's a fair thing to say. But if the government's going to make me take their money, I may as well do something with it. I feel like it's a fun, harmless way to do something productive with free stimulus money the government is giving me that I don't even want. It's just, I don't know, it makes me smile a little bit in the quiet moments. Yeah,
it's fascinating to me. One more thing before I get into the rapid fire questions is I saw this, you tweeted, and I couldn't stop laughing when I read it. You said that you thought the MMA community were really great at memes, but the Bitcoiners are the meme masters. Explain that a little bit more, because that is a topic really, really think people underestimate of like the meme is the message. But talk a little bit about the memes and Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that is what familiarized me with the fact that there was a whole secret language and certain ways of spelling things and all this. It's just been it's been a fun few weeks, I gotta say. It's definitely a crash course in understanding the lingo and the nomenclature of Bitcoin. So I got flooded with people taking my pictures and giving me laser eyes, which was just so great. I got this whole like gallery of resurrecting Playboy pictures and taking my profile picture and lasering it up. So I got a nice little art gallery, little digital art gallery there made for me. Yeah, but the memes are crazy. But people like put me in memes and make memes about me being in Bitcoin, and I never had experienced anything like that. But it's fun. I'll save them and send them to friends for the ones that can relate to those. So it's fun. I had no idea y'all were the meme masters.
We prefer the terminology meme lords, but meme masters is basically the same thing, right?
Yeah. See, but meme lords is you have to have the insider language. So thank you for that.
You'll appreciate this. I think Elon Musk was asked in a New York Times or a Bloomberg article. They said, you're a billionaire. You also like memes, but given the choice, would you rather be a billionaire or a meme lord? What would you choose? And he said meme lord, which will forever go down as one of the great comments, I think, in a professional interview.
I love how he doesn't take himself too seriously all the time. You just reach a point of success where you don't have to answer questions in the right, predictable way. I think that's why we like him so much.
That is very, very true. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask you 3 questions that I ask everybody. You'll get to ask me one at the end. The first is, what is the most important book that you've ever read?
Most important book I've ever read. So many great ones. What do I have? I got my wall. I need a minute. Too many.
That's okay.
You know what? Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week, I would say. Pretty revolutionary.
Yeah,
for me.
That's a great book, and obviously with a lot of what you were doing before pandemic makes sense. Second question is sleep schedule. It comes from our friends over at 8 Sleep. They've got a thermoregulated bed, means that you can turn it really hot or really cold. And I used to sleep like 5 or 6 hours. I thought that was normal. And then I started sleeping on this thing, and now I'm like 8 or 9 hours, completely changed my life, and full-on convert of the sleep religion. What is your sleep schedule now, and how has that transitioned over time?
Yeah, well, I've been getting the best sleep of my life now that LA is shut down, I guess all of California, which isn't super great for my, hustle mentality, I guess. But no, it's been good. I can, sleep like midnight to 8, there's a little bit of flexibility in there, but.
And what did you used to do? You used to sleep 8 hours?
Well, no, I mean, especially with no day ever looked like the next one, I would just fit it in where I could, and early mornings with productions and late nights and a lot of Hollywood culture going till 2, 3 in the morning, and then you don't go to bed till 4. And it was just really inconsistent. And then you had a whole lot to get ready for and get up early and for hair and makeup and all these things that you had to do hours before everybody else. So no, I'm getting a lot more sleep these days. More than I probably would like. You have these messages in your unconscious buried, like if you're sleeping 8 hours, you're not working hard enough, that type of thing. So there has been a little bit of alleviation as far as that goes. But also I'm not missing anything. There's nothing I need to go out and do that, or at least I'm not hearing about it.
I think you're doing just fine with 8 hours. Last question you get asked me one is aliens. Are you a believer or a non-believer?
Oh, I believe in possibility. I've always just been so open-minded that it was okay for me to be wrong with whatever I thought. And also my conception of if there's aliens, if there's a God, if this or that, and it doesn't change the reality of what actually is. So everybody can just have their opinion and it's fine. Right.
That is
I would say I would say there's probably intelligent life out there somewhere.
That is a fantastic way to answer that question, and no one has ever answered it that way. So, so I will take it. What question do you have for me to finish up?
Well, now that I own some Bitcoin, what's next? What do I got to do? Just wait for a dip, buy some more, keep buying Bitcoin. Everybody will come in now that I bought Bitcoin and try to convince me about other altcoins, and people will come in and be like, no, don't do that.
I will let you make your own choices, but I think that what you will find is that every Bitcoiner believes the same two things. They never own enough, and they don't want the US dollar price to go up because they want to buy more of it. So it's a very interesting dynamic. But now, look, I think it's a game of accumulation when you have a finite asset and just dollar cost averaging, right? You get your paycheck and you just take whatever percentage, whether it's 0.5% or some material percentage, and you just buy Bitcoin and convert the dollars into Bitcoin and you keep going, right?
What wallet or platforms do you recommend for me?
So I think that for you specifically, given that you're coming at this from kind of a learning perspective, I think it's important that you learn about all of them, right? So there's hardware wallets, there's kind of cold storage, and then there's hot storage. You can also use things like BlockFi to earn interest on your Bitcoin. But I think that the key piece is less about like any one platform. I think it's much more about understanding, hey, there's 4 or 5 different ways you can custody the assets and going and doing it, right? I think that's probably like, if I was in your shoes and kind of very, very early on, the thing I wish I'd done way earlier than I really did was go and understand, okay, what exactly does cold storage mean? Like, how do I do it, right? Because as you go through that experience, after you do it, you learn a ton, right? And you learn so much more than if you would have just read about it online. Then same thing with hardware wallets. Like, how do I do it, right? And if you wanted to get really ambitious, you can even set up a Bitcoin node, right? And again, like, there's people online for sure, you can find folks who can help you do it, but like going through that process and understanding how a node works and why it's important, I think would just give you like the crash course of actually like the hands-on experience that reading online just can't imitate.
Yeah, excellent. Well, that gives me something to do since, like I said, I've got a lot of free time right now. So, but I appreciate all the insights. Love watching your podcasts.
For sure. Where can we send people to find you on the internet if they want to reach out or consume some of the content?
Yeah, follow me, Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse, Jessica Vaugn. Vaugn is Vaugn. There's no H. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Listen, Jessica, thank you so much for doing this. I'll have to do it again in the future.
Thanks again for the great introductory Zoom experience.